You wouldn't believe what happened when the one person I trusted most, the one who held my hand through my darkest nights, turned out to be the woman undoing everything I was trying to rebuild. Before I share what happened next, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. My name's Rachel. I'm 36, divorced, no kids, and rebuilding from the wreckage of a life I thought I'd be living forever. I live in a modest 2-bedroom in Minneapolis, nothing fancy, but warm, quiet, mine. The kind of place where the fridge hums just loud enough to fill the silence. Where you fold laundry at 10 p.m. on a Thursday and realize no one's coming home to you. But I wasn't always alone. 6 years ago, I had a husband, a house in St. Paul, a golden retriever named Milo, and the best friend a girl could ask for, or so I thought. Her name was Jen. And if you'd asked me back then, I would have told you she was more like a sister than a friend. We met in college. She was the wild, loud-mouthed political science major who wore Doc Martens with sundresses and lit up every room. I was quieter, more grounded. More, I'll drive you home and hold your hair back after your third tequila shot kind of friend. Jen liked to stir things up. I liked to hold them together. It worked. For over a decade, we were inseparable. She was my maid of honor when I married Eric. She planned the bachelorette party in Vegas and gave a speech that made both my mom and my boss cry. She was that friend, the one who remembered your birthday and your dog's birthday. So when things started falling apart with Eric, of course I turned to Jen. What I didn't realize at the time was how that pain, the cracks forming in my marriage, was the opening she'd been waiting for. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back then, the problems felt like mine to carry. Eric had lost his job at the architecture firm. He said it was office politics. I suspected it was the third performance review in a row. I was still working full-time in marketing at a regional credit union, picking up freelance copy gigs on weekends just to keep the lights on. The stress was constant. Eric wasn't sleeping. He'd lie on the couch with ESPN playing on mute and scroll Reddit until 3 a.m. He drank more, snapped more. Sex faded. Conversations turned into one-sided monologues about how the world was against him. He started calling my job cute and mocking my self-care routines, yoga, journaling, even therapy. Must be nice, he'd say, to have time to heal while I'm out here getting my soul crushed. I begged him to try therapy. He refused. I begged him to at least go for a walk with me. He laughed and said, "What am I, a golden retriever?" That joke stopped being funny the day we had to rehome Milo because Eric couldn't handle the noise. Through it all, Jen was there. She'd show up with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine on nights when I couldn't face the silent house. She'd send memes that made me snort laugh at my desk. She even helped me build my side hustle, a small Etsy shop where I sold hand-lettered prints with healing quotes and affirmations. I was trying to hold on to some version of myself. Jen cheered me on like a damn cheerleader. But looking back, there were signs. Like how she'd say things like, "You sure you want to post that quote? Sounds a little desperate." Or, "I love you, but if I had a man who cooked like Eric, I'd never complain." Or the way she started dressing up a little more every time she came over, even when we were just eating pad thai on my couch. It's funny how hindsight burns sharper than the betrayal itself. Back then, I still believed in her. So when I hit rock bottom, when I finally realized Eric was never going to meet me halfway, Jen was the first person I called. I had just finished a therapy session where my counselor asked, "When was the last time you felt safe in your own home?" And I couldn't answer. The silence in that room hit me like a freight train. That night, I told Eric I was done. He didn't even look up from his phone. "I figured," he said. "Jen warned me this would happen." I blinked. "What?" "She said you were changing. Getting selfish. All this therapy crap, it's turned you into someone else." I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up replaying every moment Jen and I had shared over the last few months. Every cryptic comment. Every too long glance at Eric when she thought I wasn't looking. Every time she called me intense or dramatic when I tried to open up. I still didn't believe it. Not really. I left Eric the next week. Packed what little I had left, found a cheap apartment, started over. And Jen, well, she helped me move. Made jokes about how this is the glow-up phase, and you're gonna look back and laugh. She even bought me a houseplant, one of those snake plants that's impossible to kill, and said, "This is your reminder. You're harder to break than you think." I cried, hugged her, told her I didn't know what I'd do without her. And she smiled, that tight, unreadable smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't know it yet, but she already had my ex in her bed. And I was still in therapy, blaming myself. In the weeks after I moved out, life felt like learning to walk again on legs that never fully healed. Every morning I woke up feeling like I had forgotten something, like I'd left a stove on or lost a part of myself somewhere between the old house and my new apartment. The silence was so loud it felt physical. My therapist, Dr. Avery, kept telling me that silence wasn't emptiness, it was space. But space can feel like a punishment when you're used to filling every second with noise to keep from falling apart. I worked remotely most days. The glow of my laptop screen became my sun. I'd light a cheap Target candle, sip burnt coffee, and force myself to type product descriptions and taglines for local businesses, pretending like my heart hadn't recently been scraped across concrete. Jen came over a lot at first. Too much, actually. She'd show up unannounced with matcha lattes and little gifts, scented lotion, beaded bracelets, a journal with gold-foiled pages. She'd wander around my apartment like she was making sure nothing survived the move except her. "You need people, Rach," she'd say. "Isolation is where weakness grows." The irony of that sentence would haunt me later. Every Wednesday night, she dragged me to a suburban wine bar where the glasses were overpriced and the music was always 2 decibels too loud. She'd wave at the bartenders like she owned the place, order flights of rows, and grill me about the divorce. "Do you miss him? Did you really try hard enough? Are you sure this isn't just a phase? People divorce too easily these days, you know?" She'd phrase it like concern, but every jab felt intentional, like she was slowly pushing me toward an emotional edge while smiling sweetly. Whenever I stumbled over the answers, she'd tilt her head and look at me with that expression, the sympathetic frown that somehow made me feel small, broken, dramatic. I started to dread her visits. One night, I told her I needed space. I said therapy was bringing up a lot, and I needed quiet to figure out who I was without the noise. She stiffened, then forced a laugh. "Oh please, Rachel. You're turning into one of those self-help podcast people. Next thing I know you're gonna manifest a new personality and block everyone." Her joke landed like acid. I swallowed the hurt and said, "I just need a little breathing room." She stared at me for a long time, eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. "Fine," she said. "Take all the space you want." She left without hugging me. That was the first time she ever walked out on me. The next morning, she didn't text. Then a week passed. Then 2. For the first time in years, I went days without hearing from her or Eric. The quiet felt unfamiliar, painful, but also clarifying. I started journaling more. I took long walks by the river at sunrise when the water looked like glass, and the world wasn't awake enough to demand anything from me. My Etsy shop started doing better. 2 mostly strangers messaging me saying my hand-lettered quotes helped them get through breakups, medical trauma, job loss. It felt surreal that something born from my pain could help others. And then, everything shifted. It was a Saturday morning in late March. I was wearing mismatched pajamas and cleaning out my pantry when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey Rachel. You don't know me but I thought you should see this." A screenshot followed. Jen and Eric. Smiling. Arms wrapped around each other in a dimly lit restaurant. His hand on her thigh. Her head on his shoulder. The caption read, "So lucky I found someone who really understands me." And the comments were flooded with people cheering them on, talking about true love, fate, when the timing is right, and my personal favorite. Some relationships fall apart so better ones can begin. I stood there staring at my phone frozen. My ears were ringing. My hands shook so hard I dropped the phone on the tile. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. I wasn't shocked that he moved on in a way I expected it. But the timing, the deceit, the hypocrisy, the fact that the woman who swore she loved me like a sister was sitting on my husband's lap in a booth that I recognized, the same booth where I told her I thought my marriage was falling apart. Every conversation we had replayed in my head at once. Every weird comment she made. Every time she defended him. Every time she told me therapy was changing me. She wasn't supporting me. She was scouting the ruins. I didn't cry right away. I just went numb, the kind of numb where your body feels heavy, like gravity just doubled. I sank onto the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet, trying not to throw up. Then another message came in. A video. They were at a bar. She was sitting on his lap. He kissed her neck. She giggled. Someone off-screen yelled, "Finally. About time you two made it official." My lungs collapsed. I put a hand over my mouth to muffle the sound that escaped, something between a sob and a scream. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for me, for the version of myself who trusted so blindly, for the woman who once believed loyalty meant something. I called Jen. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. Third time. Blocked. That was the moment the tears stopped. Not because I was okay, but because something inside me snapped back into place with brutal clarity. I wasn't the broken one. They were. Later that night, I opened Instagram and saw she had posted a photo, her in his hoodie, sitting on the hood of his car like a teenager. Found my peace. Healed people heal people. Right person, wrong time. Hashtags. Hashtag glow up, hashtag new chapter, hashtag blessed. I felt something hot rise in my chest, not rage, not grief. Something cleaner. Sharper. A quiet conviction. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I didn't block her. I didn't post anything passive-aggressive or vague. I simply sat there and realized. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to be the messy ex-wife who loses control. So I did the most terrifying, powerful thing I could do. I stayed silent. Because silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. And while they flaunted their love story online, I started to see their reflection for what it really was. Two insecure people clinging to each other to avoid facing themselves. But silence doesn't protect you from reality forever. Because the truth has a way of finding the light. And when it finally came out, when I learned just how deep the betrayal went, that was the day my soft revenge began. People talk about heartbreak like it's one clean shatter, like a glass slipping off a counter and smashing on tile. But real heartbreak isn't like that. It's slow. It's quiet. It's tiny fractures that give way over time. You don't even realize you're breaking until you're in pieces. The days after the photos surfaced were like moving underwater. Everything felt thick, slowed down, delayed, like I was watching myself through someone else's eyes. I still went to work. I still showed up for therapy. I still answered emails and paid bills and did laundry. But none of it felt real. Dr. Avery asked, "How are you holding all of this?" And all I could say was, lightly. Like if I grip too tight, I'll dissolve. But something interesting happened. People started reaching out. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months. Moms from my old yoga class. Even one of Eric's former coworkers, a guy named Luis, who messaged me on Facebook asking if I was okay because he heard rumors. Rumors. That word hit like a slap. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with a narrative being written without me. One night, after a therapy session, I stopped at a Trader Joe's for groceries. I was staring blankly at a display of overpriced flowers when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "I'm so sorry, Rachel." I turned and saw Melanie, a woman from our old friend circle, someone who used to host the annual Friendsgiving potluck. She walked toward me with a look I recognized, pity wrapped in awkwardness. "We all found out around the same time," she said, lowering her voice. "None of us knew how to tell you." I swallowed hard. "Found out what, exactly?" She hesitated, eyes darting around, like checking for danger. "They didn't start dating after the divorce. They were together before." My stomach dropped. "How long?" I whispered. She exhaled, like she'd been holding the truth in her mouth for months. "Almost a year." The world tilted. A year. A year of her pretending to comfort me. A year of him pretending to fight for our marriage. A year of therapy sessions where I confessed every insecurity while they built a secret life behind my back. Melanie put a hand on my arm. "I'm so sorry." People saw them together. At the brewery on 5th, the the cabin weekend in Duluth. She said you two were taking space and you didn't want to be around people. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. I remembered that weekend. I was sick with the flu, alone in bed, crying because Eric wouldn't answer his phone. Jen said she was visiting her parents. She brought soup the next day and told me I looked like death but would bounce back because I was a fighter. That was the first night I told her I thought Eric was lying to me. She hugged me. They were together the whole time. I felt the floor under me like an unsteady boat, everything swaying, unstable. Melanie looked nervous, like she wasn't sure if she made a mistake telling me. She squeezed my arm and whispered, "If you ever need anything, I'm around." She walked away, leaving me alone with the flowers and the hum of fluorescent lights. I stood there for a long time. Then something shifted, subtle but seismic. It was like a fog lifted, and I could suddenly see everything with brutal clarity. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was strategic. Calculated. They weren't just together. They had rewritten the story so that I was the unstable one. Therapy obsessed. Emotionally fragile. Dramatic. The villain. It wasn't enough to steal my marriage. They had stolen my credibility. That was the real wound. That night, after hours of staring at my ceiling and listening to the radiator hiss, I made a decision that would quietly change everything. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let the truth unravel them on its own. And I would walk away clean. The universe must have heard me, because opportunities started appearing like dominoes ready to fall if I nudged the first one. It started with a message on Etsy from a woman named Hannah, the assistant manager of a local boutique chain that featured Minnesota-based artisans. She said she loved my prints and wanted to discuss wholesale orders. Wholesale. As in real business. As in something mine, something built from my pain but not defined by it. We set up a meeting the next week at a coffee shop. I wore my most put-together outfit, black jeans, a soft mauve blouse, boots that made me feel like I had a spine again. Hannah walked in smiling, warm, authentic. She held one of my prints, the one that said, "You don't need to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." She said, "This one hit me like a sermon. Women need this." I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but not the broken kind. The rebirth kind. We talked for 2 hours. She loved my story. She wanted to feature it, not the messy gossip version, but the real human one. She said their customers connect deeply with resilience and vulnerability. I almost laughed at the irony. My ex and ex-best friend built a story about my weakness, and here I was turning it into strength. When I walked out of that cafe, I felt taller. I hadn't posted anything online since the betrayal went public, but that night, I opened Instagram and slowly typed out a caption under a photo I'd taken of the river at sunrise. Sometimes the people you'd take a bullet for are the ones holding the gun. Healing is painful, but losing what was never real is freedom. No names. No accusations. Just truth. The comments flooded in. Hundreds of strangers. Women sharing their stories. Men admitting they'd never understood betrayal like this before. People telling me they saw me. That they were proud of me. When I went to bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. But peace rarely lasts long when insecure people are watching. 2 days later, Jen called. Not texted. Not emailed. Called. Her name lit up my phone like a ghost dragging chains. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Then she called again. And again. On the 4th try, I answered, mostly because I wanted to hear the sound of her voice now that I finally knew the truth. She started talking fast, breathless, fake crying. I could hear the performance in every syllable. "Rachel, oh my God, I've been meaning to talk to you. Things got so complicated. I never wanted to hurt you. You don't understand what happened between me and Eric. It wasn't planned. We were both struggling. We connected emotionally first. I tried to tell you, but you were so fragile and I didn't want to break you." I laughed. Out loud. A sharp, humorless sound that cut through her script. "You didn't want to break me?" I said quietly. "Jen, you studied the cracks." Silence. Then a shaky inhale. "You're being unfair. You left him first, remember? You abandoned your marriage, and you pushed everyone away with all that therapy and self-help crap." I was just trying to keep things from falling apart. My voice went cold. You weren't trying to keep things together. You were trying to see how much you could take before I noticed. She sputtered something about fate and right timing and love finding a way, like she'd memorized lines from a Hallmark movie. I listened. Calm. Detached. Then I said 6 words that made her choke on her breath. I hope he treats you better than he treated me. Dead silence. Then I hung up. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't explain. And that silence, that calm control, was the exact thing she couldn't handle. Because people like Jen need chaos to survive. They need drama to stay relevant. They need to be the center of the narrative. And I had just stripped her of power. She wanted a spectacle. I gave her a mirror. The next day, the unraveling began, faster than I expected. A message from Luis popped up again. Call me. You need to know this. What he told me would change everything about Eric, about Jen, about what they stole from me long before the divorce. And it would set the stage for my quiet, devastating revenge. Luis met me at a quiet local cafe just off Hennepin. It was the kind of place with creaky floors, plants in mismatched pots, and handwritten signs reminding people to bust their own tables. I liked it because it didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. Something about that felt important that day. He was already there when I arrived, nervously fidgeting with his coffee sleeve. When he saw me, he stood up fast, almost knocking over his cup. I could tell he felt guilty, not for what he did, but for how long he waited to tell me. I should have come to you sooner, he said, not even sitting before starting. Start now, I said. I'm ready. And I was. I had never been more ready. He told me that during the last year of my marriage, Eric had been floating a business idea at work, some boutique architecture consulting firm for creative urban redevelopment. The kind of niche, eco-friendly startup you pitch to boardrooms with vision boards and buzzwords. What Luis said next turned my stomach. He was using your Etsy work, your branding style, your quotes, even your actual words in his pitch decks. I blinked. What? Your designs. Your handwriting. That whole healing through design tagline you told us about at that Christmas party? He used it. Word for word. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Luis went on. He even told people that his wife, that you, would be the in-house creative consultant. He said you'd be managing the emotional branding side of things, helping clients reimagine spaces with soul. That was my phrase. Spaces with soul. I wrote that in my journal a year earlier, during a therapy session about reclaiming safe environments. I felt a deep, sinking rage settle in my bones. Not fiery. Not explosive. Cold. Controlled. The kind of rage that didn't scream, it planned. Luis sighed. I think Jen was in on it too. She started showing up at our client pitch meetings a few months before the divorce. Always hovering. Always adding little things to the presentations. I just thought, maybe she was helping. But it felt off. It all clicked. The late-night work Eric was doing. The weekend consultations. The weird evasiveness when I asked him about finances. Jen showing sudden interest in design. The fact that their affair wasn't just personal, it was professional. They didn't just steal my husband. They stole my voice. And they used it to build a business based on the very pain they caused. I thanked Luis calmly and promised I wouldn't use his name. He looked relieved, but also haunted, like he knew he'd just handed me a match and there was no telling what I'd light with it. But I didn't want to burn them. I wanted to bury them with silence, success, and slow exposure. Here's what I did. I spent the next month turning my Etsy shop into a brand. I hired a designer, someone who understood my aesthetic, but gave it polish. We created a real logo, brand kit, and website. I renamed the shop to something deeply personal but not obvious, Second Root. A nod to therapy, to regrowth, to resilience. I started offering downloadable prints, guided journals, home wall decals. I did local craft fairs. I offered custom commissions for therapists' offices and wellness studios. Slowly, my story started circulating, not the drama, but the truth. Divorced woman heals through art. Builds a business from brokenness. Turns loss into language. It resonated. People messaged me constantly. You put into words what I couldn't say. Your print helped me through chemo. I'm leaving a narcissist and your quotes gave me strength. Every sale felt like a reclamation. I started a blog too. Nothing flashy. Just short posts about trauma, healing, the quiet war of rebuilding. I never mention Eric or Jen by name, but every sentence carried the weight of what they did. And the people who needed to find it, found it. Then came the final thread in the tapestry of my revenge. Hannah, the boutique owner who first reached out, connected me with a podcast host in Chicago. A mental health-focused series called Truth Threads. She asked me to come on and talk about art, healing, and the emotional layers behind design. I almost said no. I was scared. But then I thought about Jen. About how she always talked over me. Corrected me in front of people. Made me second-guess my own experiences. So I said yes. The episode aired 6 weeks later. I told my story, calmly, factually, without names. I described a woman who lost her marriage, her best friend, and her sense of self in 1 year. I described how she rebuilt from the rubble. How she made art out of pain. How she found her voice in silence. The episode went viral. Over 400,000 downloads in the first 2 weeks. My Etsy traffic tripled. I got emails from publishers asking if I'd consider a book deal. One therapist in Oregon bulk ordered 150 journals for her clinic. Jen messaged me a week later. Subject line, "Wow. Body, congrats on the podcast. I didn't realize you were still so hurt. Maybe we should talk. P.S. People keep asking if your story is about me. I've told them it's not." I didn't respond. Instead, I posted a quote from my upcoming print collection. They'll say you're bitter. Let them. Let them see what bitterness grows into when it's watered with truth and lit by grace. I never heard from her again. As for Eric, Luis told me he tried to pitch a version of his business to a mid-level design firm in the city. They Googled him. Found my podcast. Passed. Word gets around. Quietly. Efficiently. A few months later, I heard from someone that he was working part-time at a Home Depot, freelancing on the side, and still telling people he was misunderstood. Meanwhile, I signed a licensing deal for my prints to be sold in a national chain of wellness stores. Sometimes people ask me if I ever confronted them. If I ever screamed, or keyed a car, or posted screenshots. The answer is no. I didn't destroy them. I didn't have to. They did that on their own. All I did was reclaim what was mine, my truth, my voice, my peace. And I told the story. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's healing louder than they expected. It's becoming someone they can never touch again. It's building a life so rooted in self-worth that betrayal can't survive in the soil. And if you're listening to this, if you've been betrayed by someone who once held your secrets in their hands, let me say this to you. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to become after. And you, my love, are not done becoming.